Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience as we worked through the technical details and everything. Appreciate it. And also, welcome to, we're going to talk about budgeting today. Woohoo! A little bit about me. My name is BethAnne, and I'm an accredited financial counselor. And so with AFCPE, and they have continuing education, so every year, every week, and all, I'm able to get additional information about what's happening in personal finances and all. And then I also do a lot of one-on-one financial counseling. I love assisting and coming along individuals and helping them, as well as I do group financial literacy. I have a women's group I meet with once a month, and we just talk about any topics that they're interested in. Our upcoming topic is taxes, because tax season is coming up and all. And then, yeah, I just really enjoy helping others, empowering them to know more information about what their personal finances are, to maybe if they have debt, helping them with that, as well as managing any income they have, planning for the future, planning for their goals, whether they be financial specific or not. And my fun fact is I used to play the oboe from 5th grade all the way to college graduation. A budget is like a New Year's resolution. All right, we all know it's designed to help us out, and yet sometimes it's so hard and so trouble to stick with it. But we hope that you'll be able to learn some ideas today. But first, we're going to have a couple questions here. So, what is a budget? We have multiple choice, an estimate of income and expenses for a set period of time, or B, a total after-tax income for a given pay period, or C, the act of living frugally. What do y'all think? A, an estimate of income and expenses. All right. Anybody have any digital subscriptions? Any apps that are ongoing or anything like that? Why are digital subscriptions for things like movies or music or ebooks, whatever, considered sneaky expenses? They can, you might forget that you have them, etc. But yes, you can often be charged extra without your consent. Service providers can sign you up and start charging your credit card without you even knowing it. And the total cost can add up pretty quickly, even if you're subscribed, or especially if you're subscribed to multiple services at one time. What do y'all think? Costs can definitely add up. You're like, oh, I signed up for one of these in January, another one in February, March, whatever, and you forget you have them all. All right. A lot of reasons, or a reason lots of people avoid budgeting is because they think it means giving up everything they love and converting to super frugal lifestyle. True or false? Yes, agreed. Well, let's talk about some misconceptions about budgeting. So, having a budget means you feel guilty about spending your money on fun stuff. Maybe it makes you feel confident with your money because you know exactly where everything's going to go. In order for a budget to be successful, you need to switch to a super frugal lifestyle. You just need to understand where your money's going. And if you know where that is, where your money is actually going, you don't have to stress out about other things. And you might be able to have the funds for other fun things. Budgets keep you stressed, or budgets keep you safe. So what about some best practices? There are all kinds of ways that you can manage your money and keep track of it. All right, welcome. You just need to find a budget that works for you. So some people like apps. Some people like pencil and paper. I worked with one lady, and so she wrote it down, and then she took a picture of it and texted it to me. And that's the way she liked to work, and I was like, great, fine. She's still keeping track of her funds. She's still keeping track of her income and expenses. But yes, if you like apps, if you like Excel, if you like Google Sheets, great. So you base your budget and income on your take-home pay. So do you guys know the difference between gross pay and net pay? Anybody have questions? So gross is how much you earn straight away, okay? But then net is that gross pay minus taxes, minus Medicare if you get it, Social Security, and all of any other deductions. Maybe you're, maybe in the future your employer will pay for health care. So maybe some of that information. So what's the net pay is the actual amount of your check. Like that either is direct deposited, or if you actually get a physical check, that's the amount. So the net pay is what we really want to make sure we know, or AKA take-home pay, okay? So it subtracts all the taxes, other deductions from your income, okay? And it doesn't, the take-home pay doesn't really have to be job related. It can be a money that you have available to you. So if maybe you don't have a job right now, maybe you have a student loan. So that's money that you have that you can actually spend, or maybe you have grant money or other money that you may have from whatever different source it is. Whatever money you have, that's what you could say or consider, in this case, your take-home pay. Savings. So taking savings seriously, having a monthly savings contribution can be just another line item in expenses. So some people consider the amount that they save is an expense, just like their power bill and their gas bill and whatever other bills that they may have. If you make it a priority, then you won't maybe have as much a tendency to skip it because, kind of thing. Because the power company is not going to let you just skip the power bill that particular month, right? Because you just don't have the money or just don't feel like paying it. If you do the same thing with your savings and you take it seriously for each month, and it's just another line item, then great. Later on, you're going to definitely have your savings build up. Question was, is your emergency fund part of your savings? And so yes, I think you can save for it. You may have different goals, and then you can figure out what amount do you need to save. Maybe you have, I don't know, $500 saved, and $400 is the emergency fund, and $100 is just for something else, or all 500, and so you might over time figure out what do I need to save in my actual emergency fund, and that's going to change later. Later on you'll get a job, or you might already have a job, of course, but you'll get a different job, and you'll have maybe another emergency fund. So some people say anywhere from 3 to 6 months of expenses. And that number is going to change over time, right? Your expenses today are not going to be the same as they are 5, 10, 15 years from now. And so that amount might grow too. So the question was, where do you want to put your savings? You want to put it in a place that you can access easily, right? So if you invest it, which investing is awesome too, but it might be a little bit, if you don't have some of the initial basics, it might be a little bit further down the line. And so you want it easy to access, such that if you get a flat tire, you can't, it's harder to get the money out of the investment account because I got to do all this other stuff, as opposed to just going to the bank, putting it, and doing it that way. Or some other appliance goes down, or your car breaks down, or whatever. So yes, a high yield savings account is great and stuff, as opposed to a regular savings. The question is, how much should I put? How much should you save? That kind of thing. I think it's going to depend on what order of your goals and what prioritization you have. So for some people, again, it does depend on where you are in your life. So I'm going to give you a generic sort of order of operations, and then you'll need to figure out, how does this apply to me? But yes, having a fully funded emergency fund might be, step one. And so you determine, what does fully funded mean to me? Is that $500? Is that $1,000? I don't. So once you have it to whatever number that you're good with, then yes, figuring out what are your other goals. And yes, if investments is one of them, then by all means you could to do that. If you have an employer that offers retirement savings, that kind of thing, great. Maybe that's an avenue that will help you with some of your investments. And so that's where a lot of people invest first, is they have an employer that happens to have a retirement savings, whether it's a 403B or 401k, or if you're in the military, a TSP. So those are some of the first ways that many people, not everybody, of course, do get invested too. Yeah, but yes, the percentage is going to probably vary over time based on your other expenses and or other financial goals. Yes, checking your budget and not your balance. So if you're making a plan every month of, where's my money going to go? Okay, how much money am I going to take in? What's my take-home pay, my net income? And then figuring out all of my future expenses, okay? And so as opposed to sort of, oh, look at that, the power bill went through. And then you can just sort of check it off the list, because you already know what, at least the usual expenses, you already know what they are, potentially. If you have rent, great, you know that that's coming. And that's mostly-ish the same dollar amount each month, right? Your utilities might vary a little bit depending upon your situation, but you can just sort of check off, okay, great, I have the, entertainment stuff, I've got utility stuff, great, they're just coming off the list, and you can sort of know that. Because if you just check your balance and you forgot that your power bill didn't actually go through yet, then you're going to be in a world of hurt if you're like, oh, well, I can go out to the movies or whatever you're doing, kind of thing. Building up an emergency fund. Sorry, I forgot this slide was coming. So again, 3 to 6 months of living expenses expenses, that's going to change over time. And yes, how do you figure out what are your actual 1 month's expenses, much less 3 to 6 months? So we'll talk about that a little bit later here too. Great, we've talked about how cool a budget is, how great it is, and everything. How do you actually create a budget, right? So let's talk about building that budget. So one option, again, there's lots of different ways. I'm going to talk about one option today or a couple different options, and really you can see what works the best for you, okay? So this first one is a 50-30-20, okay? And we're going to talk about what does that mean. So it is a proportional budgeting system, meaning you divide up your monthly income into different categories. So similar to what he was saying, maybe 40% of investing, etc. And you make sure that you can hit some of these goals. So 50% of needs, and again, this is a starting place, okay? This is not something you have to do. You don't have to say exactly 50%. It's what makes sense for your life. But if you're not sure where to start, this is a decent starting point, okay? So 50% of your take-home pay, your monthly income can go to needs, okay? What do you need to live, right? You need some housing, whatever way and shape you do that. You need probably food, right? Transportation, depending upon, maybe you walk and that's an option, great. But in some way you need your needs, right? We're gonna talk about more about these categories in a second. And then savings, great, 20% to that and 30% to wants, okay? And again, these are ideas, these are not hard and fast rules, but there's something to start with. First, we got to calculate our income, right? Our monthly net income, that's our take-home pay again, after taxes, any payroll deductions, and it's used to determine your spending limits, all right? So that's your first point of how much can you actually spend, okay? So for example, if your monthly net income is $3,000, you could spend $3,000, right? 50% of that is, of course, $1,500, and that's on needs, 30% $900 on wants, and 20% or $600 on savings, okay? So then, let's define more about those categories. We talked about needs, wants, savings, that kind of thing, to divide it up, but what actually goes into these actual categories kind of thing? Needs, all right. Those are those essential expenses. Skipping them would lead to serious consequences. Illness, job loss, legal trouble. You know, if you can't pay the rent or your mortgage later on or whatever other housing arrangements that you have, that's probably pretty bad, right? And obviously if you can't eat because you can't buy groceries or something, that's probably pretty bad too. So examples, as we mentioned, utilities, clothing, healthcare, transportation, taxes, minimum payments on things, whether that be a credit card or something else, that kind of thing. Now it does of course depend on what actually was put onto that credit card, but depending upon what that is. And again, this may mean more to start with, more the basics, right? Do you need the highest fashion of those clothing? Obviously you need clothing, of course, but do you need like the most expensive clothing? Maybe not. Can you shop at a different grocery store that might have lower prices? Perhaps so, that type of thing. At least until you have you know, a good hold on all of these expenses that you may have. So let's shift now to wants. So they account for a lot of your spending. It's more than the savings. And again, that's in this plan, not that that has to be forever on your particular life, but you have an account for your spending. And these are the non-essential products and services you might purchase. Maybe it's cable, maybe it's internet, maybe you know, that type of thing. Restaurants or takeout, entertainment, travel, fashion, electronics, that kind of idea. Some of your subscriptions, maybe all of your subscriptions, does depend on you. Now they did have phone on this. I don't know, for the most part in today's world, probably phone and internet are pretty required and all, but that's what they had there too. So, and then savings. Savings are the, any expenses related to debt repayment, savings plans. And again, so saving and investing, just as a quick note, some people put them sorted together, some people put them separate. Savings is, you know, that maybe that emergency savings, the rainy day fund, that type of thing. Whereas investing, maybe, and it's really just a point of view. It's all saving money, if you will, to some extent. But investing might be more of looking toward your future, that type of thing. And I know it's a little crazy to talk about retirement now, but you know, one day you're going to want to retire. You're not going to want to necessarily, you know, if you're still working at age 70, 80, that kind of thing, I hope it's because you like to, not because you have to. Savings. Emergency savings funds, as we've discussed, maybe you need, this is where you might, if applicable, pay for student loans if you have, or repayment that is, credit card debt, retirement savings, down payments, maybe you're gonna save for a down payment on a house or a down payment on something else, great. But So you have those short-term savings goals, that type of thing, as well as any personal savings. So the question is, do you still stick to 50, 30, 20 on other non-income such as gifts or other things? I think that's going to be based on, what you need to do, kind of thing. And so what's important to you? Okay, great. You just got this awesome gift of, I don't know, your grandparents gave you $100 or whatever kind of thing. Do you have to actually split it 50, 30, 20? Maybe, maybe not. It depends. Maybe you were saving for a goal, some other goal, and you had, I'd really like to save for a new computer, new laptop, whatever. I'm $100 short. Boom, great. This is, and you put all of the 100% into the savings of your savings for a new laptop fund, if you will. So I do think it's going to depend. I don't think that you have to necessarily. But the other thing is, if you ever fall short in another category, like, hey, you know what, I'm a little short on some other category, whether it be savings or needs or wants, you may then need to slip it in there. But I don't think there's a hard rule on some of that too. Tracking your spending. Jen in the video mentioned, sometimes I get the whole plan. The plan's written, it's great. It's on whatever, my app, it's on a piece of paper, it's on a spreadsheet. How do I, track all of this stuff that I've actually got? And the tracking your spending for at least 2 months is going to be great because you're going to figure out whatever method works for you, and you're going to figure out your expenses. Like if I was to ask each of you, all right, how much do you spend on food per month? Could you tell me? And then the next question is, how accurate is it, right? Kind of thing. So I definitely, because I work with lots of different individuals, I definitely had a couple individuals that said, you know what, we spend $500 a month on food for their family of 4. Okay, great. And then I said, all right, track your food expenses for 2 months. Come back, tell me what that about dollar is. Is it $500 or, $500 per month, that kind of thing? And they came back and it was $1,200. Not the most terrible thing in the world, but they were definitely off, right? So where did that other $700 come from? They're spending $1,200 in their actual. Where did the other $700? Well, they were. Turns out they were adding a little bit more to the credit card. Okay, this is not the most terrible thing. It's also about what do you value? What do you want to do? Do you want to put more stuff on your credit card? Okay. Do you have the means to pay it off? Okay. If you don't, maybe you do just figure out, how can I actually figure out more of that? So, but again, tracking your actual expenses for a couple months will definitely help you in figuring out how much do you actually spend, right? So again, back to that 3 to 6 months of expenses and an emergency fund. How do you figure out what 1 month's expenses are? You track it. Then you can compare your original goals. Again, that 50, 30, 20, 1,300, 1,500, 200. And then compare what you actually, the 15, 900, and 600, excuse me. And then compare that to your actual spending, okay? And so in this case, their needs versus their spending was a little less, great. Their wants was a little bit more, right? They said, they budgeted 900 and boom, it was 1,500. And then savings. They wanted to save 600. They had all the intents of saving 600, woo-woo. But alas, they only spent 200, right? And so then you have to figure out, is this what I want to do? Is this, again, you don't have to use exactly 50, 30, 20, but is this particular proportion what you want to do? Is this going to help you meet your goals in life? That's where you really have to figure out what that makes sense. Or maybe it's just a short-term thing, While for the next couple months, I know it's going to be tight, but then after X event or whatever, then you'll be better. So again, don't worry if they don't match up at first. Totally cool, right? It does take time to figure out, all right, how do I figure out after you have your expenses and then, something freaky happens that month that you didn't expect. It's okay. You'll get there. And again, your savings, your emergency savings helps too. So making it all work. So if your spending isn't matching up with the 50, 30, 20, then you do have a couple options, right? You could reduce your spending, right? That's always an option. In order to hit the guidelines, you may need to sacrifice some of your wants or find cheaper alternatives to your regular expenses, whatever that may be and whatever that may look like in your life. Maybe you need to increase your income, okay? And I do realize right now in this stage of your life that may or may not be an option kind of thing, but definitely later on, once you graduate, you may have other options. You may have a main job, maybe you have a side gig, that type of thing. Maybe at that time, the side gig doesn't really work in your life, that kind of thing. But there are definitely lots of different side gigs if you find that you do need to change things up, right? There's things that you can do physically, there's things you can do online, and just from the comfort of your own home, that kind of thing. So if you're consistently overspending and unwilling to compromise, the only solution is to make more money. Great. And that can help you too. And modify your percentages. Again, 50, 30, 20 is just a suggestion and a starting point. If you're like, I don't know where to start, boom, that's a great suggestion and place to start. But if that doesn't really help you in your life, totally cool. Figure out what the percentages are in your life that will help you, right? Maybe it's, maybe it's a 30, 10, 60. Whatever works for you. And again, that's for maybe a time in your life. This is not forever. It's like, okay, until I graduate or until X event or whatever. All right, I'm gonna have to use this budget and then later I'm gonna do this one. I really wanna, the 60 in this case is on the savings. I really, really, really wanna build up my investment account or whatever you wanna do, whatever your goals are. And you can do that too. So I'm gonna share with you another type of budget here. It's called a zero-based budget, where all your income is exactly the same as totaling all of your expenses, okay? So it's a plan, it's just, again, it's an idea. You do not have to use it. I just wanna share with you different ideas. And it means you can't spend more than you make to the actual penny. So again, no right or wrong or of how you want to spend your money. And that's where, of course, personal finances are very, very personal. So I apologize, this is sort of a little bit of an eye chart, but in this example, this fake person, if you will, gets 2 paychecks a month, okay? They get paid around the middle of the month as well as the end of the month or first of the month, whichever way you want to think about it. And with their first paycheck of the month, around the 15th, they decide, you know what, I'm gonna pay all my utilities, okay? And so they get $1,000 and they pay all their utilities, great. And so as well as, of course, they have things like food, restaurants, and transportation that come up all the time, of course, okay? And at the end, if you say 1,000 minus all my utilities, minus all the food, minus all the transportation, it equals 0, 0 at the very, very end, okay? And then paycheck number 2, when they get paid at the very end of the month, they again get $1,000, sorry, and then they get some other $500 for whatever reason. I put child support here, but it could be any other reason. Maybe they have a side gig that gets paid once a month, that kind of thing. All right, and then they have other things. Maybe they give to an organization, maybe they're saving for their emergency fund, housing, a credit card, insurance, that kind of thing, and stuff. And so again, they get $1,500 at that part of the month, and they figured out exactly how to spend that $1,500. Now, obviously, in this example, everything's to the penny, it's all pretty, blah, blah, blah. Yours won't look like this, but I do hope that this makes sense as an overall concept of whatever amount you start with, your net income, take-home pay, and then figuring out what are all my expenses, and what are those totals. And they may not be the exact same every month. That's the other thing, right? So your heating bill in the summer, probably not going to be very high, right? Or heating if you have gas, natural gas, that kind of thing. But your power bill, because air conditioning, might be really high in the summertime, depending upon, et cetera. And that's going to vary based on where you live and all this other stuff too. So there are a few variables, of course, here, but the high-level concept of figuring out where are you actually spending your money to the penny kind of thing is a good exercise. Even if you only do it once or twice in your life kind of thing, being able to figure this out is a great option too. Anybody have any questions of what this is, how it was created? This is helping you figure out, again, another method to help you figure out what is that 3 to 6 month of expenses of an emergency fund. Well, what are my monthly expenses? Boom, here you go. So you might take out, like the emergency fund, that kind of thing, giving as maybe as far as living expenses, but definitely the housing, that type, and food. So let's talk a little bit about values. We touched upon it briefly, kind of thing, but when you spend money, you're trading it for something else, whatever it may be, right? It may be time, maybe something else. So where possible, make your spending be a reflection of what you value, okay? So if you're saving, if you've got a goal of I'm going to save for X, and then so, all right, I could purchase Y, and that would be great, but will that actually help me achieve my goal? maybe yes, maybe no. And it's going to depend probably on a case-by-case basis. Is this something that I should buy now or not, kind of thing? All right, so your values are going to change over time, and your current values may be totally different from whatever you think about and what you're interested in, 5, 10, 20 years from now, kind of thing. And that's totally cool, because again, as long as you're working toward whatever goal you might have, then great. All right. But again, I do realize that you may not be able to do this little test, if you will, every single time with every single purchase, that kind of thing. But especially with larger purchases, right? Some people I hear, they really want to buy a house, and that's great. Houses are lovely, awesome. We all need a place to live. The question is buying a house right now the right thing for me to do right now in my life? So again, obviously only those individuals can answer those types of questions, but making sure you're on target with whatever you'd like to do. Does anybody know of any practical ways that they can be in control of their finances now? Shop at Aldi? Yep, I love Aldi. Yep, cool. Great. Anything else? Yep, eating out less, definitely. Yes. Creating a budget, yes. Being in control of your finances, definitely. Writing it down, seeing it on paper. I definitely work with a lot of individuals who are who've never taken the time, to write everything down. And then when we look at it together, so I will work with them and we do it together. And then they see all of it on one piece of paper or one screen, if we're on a screen. And they're like, wow, kind of thing. And so great. It's great if you're able to start now and sort of writing it all down too. Any recommendations on free apps for budgeting? There's definitely some apps out there. Some of them have free trials. And so you do have to figure, so definitely use that and see if it's even going to work for you, kind of thing. And then if you want to then pay, great. As far as free options, I'm an Excel and Google Sheets kind of person, if that's free to you, in most cases, paper pen, that type of thing. But yes, I definitely have a couple people that use apps, but sometimes it doesn't always categorize. And then some people don't like to actually connect their credit cards and bank accounts, et cetera, to the app. So then you could either manually enter it into the app, which is obviously an option too, or, or not. Some people don't like the word budget. Okay, and they're like, oh, that's sort of a scary word. So some people like conscious spending plan, right? I'm consciously deciding where and what I'm going to spend my money on, kind of thing. And so this is really for you to think about necessarily, we don't have to answer out loud necessarily, but what do you want your conscious spending plan to look like in the future? What does it look like now, perhaps? What do you want it to look like in your future, kind of idea? And so that's just something you can think about too. And then, what are, and this is sort of similar to number one too, what are things that you can do today to work toward what you want your plan to look like? And just making sure in that respect. All right. So a couple other final things, and then we'll wrap it up. Any other questions, comments? Obviously in life, some expenses you can control, and that's great. And some of them you can't, right? If you get a flat tire and you need your car for transportation, you probably, other than selling the car and taking the bus or whatever, in many cases, you're going to need, you have some expenses that you just have. But some you can control, right? You can control when you buy a house. You can control if you buy those groceries, if you go to that restaurant. This is an opinion now. Okay, just so you know, kind of thing. I am not an investment advisor or anything. I'm like a buy and hold kind of person. For me, like when I invest, I just like keep it there forever, just keep adding until later in my life when I retire, kind of thing. And so, putting it in and then, I don't know, 2 weeks later or something, taking it out. I've never done that, which doesn't mean you can't, of course, that kind of thing. I'm more of using my checking and or high yield savings account for things that I know are coming up soon. Or even, I don't know if you've heard of certificates of deposit. That's a CD and banking. That's another potential option. They have 3-month CDs, 6-month CDs, 9-month, other time frames, that kind of thing. So that's another option. It does tie your money up for whatever amount of time that is, but at the end of the time, you can just take the money out. That kind of thing. That might be if you know yourself, if you're there's spender people in the world sometimes, and there's savers, right? If you know you're a spender, but you have this really big goal and you want to get that whatever, TV, car, whatever, you could, and you have the money and you just need to make sure you don't spend it, you could put it in a CD as one option. There's lots. Depending upon where you are, it may be that you, from an order of operations, again, do you have a fully funded emergency fund? Yes, no. And if you do, great. Then yes, maybe then you can move to investing kind of idea. If you're on that investing, if you have an employer who happens to have a retirement savings plan kind of thing, let's say they have a 401k or a 403b, depending upon what type of employer you may have, and they have a match program, like if you put in 4%, I'll put in 4%. You put in 6%, I'll put in 6%. That's a great way too. So I would definitely say to contribute to the match of whatever your employer is. They've already budgeted that money into their budget. That's just free money. If you don't take it, then you're just sort of leaving it on the table. They already know, obviously, how much money you make, kind of thing. They already know how much money it could be. So go ahead and, if nothing else, take to the match. Now, if you want to go beyond the match, that is awesome too. I am never against not saving money, but saving to at least contributing to whatever the match of your employer is, awesome. Does that make sense there? And then as far as traditional versus Roth, that's also based on what you think might happen later in your life kind of thing. Again, traditional, for those of you who may not know, is pre-tax, right? You get the tax write-off, if you will, in the current year that you contribute. And then way in the future, when you actually retire or whatever, then or you're older than 59 and a half, then you can take it out and you will pay whatever ordinary income taxes you have then. Okay, so again, you don't know what that might be, but that kind of thing. But Roth is you paid the taxes now in the year that you contribute to the account, and then way in the future when you're ready to take the money out, you don't pay any taxes on the growth. So again, of course, compound interest being the awesome thing that it is, you're going to put $100 in now, and then way in the future you're going to get a lot more than $100. That kind of thing, right? You're not going to pay taxes on any of that growth. Let's pretend you got $900 of growth on $100. You're not going to pay taxes on $900. Great. And so, and again, so there's pros and cons. There's not really a right or wrong to either of those necessarily, but if you think tax rates might go up because you have no idea what the government might do as far as tax rates, then maybe Roth is a good option. If you know you'll have lower taxes in the future, maybe traditional. I definitely work with individuals who have, overtime options. Like not everybody has the ability to get overtime, but if they do, then great. How do you factor? And that's sort of the opposite way. Oh, I got more money than I thought, et cetera, kind of thing. So what you do is you start with what is the minimum amount of money that you think you'll get? Okay. And then you budget from there. And then a lot of people what they do is they categorize. All right, if I have extra money this month, I'm going to buy a soccer ball or whatever, buy something that's more of a want as opposed to a need, right? If you're prioritizing, you're putting all your needs at the top of the list, if you will. And so great. And then near the bottom, you go, oh, okay, I got some more needs down there, kind of idea. So it's all about prioritization. And then yes, after you get paid, you can say, oh, I made more or I made less. And then you're going to have to cut things from the bottom of the list, right? And unfortunately, but maybe next month you'll make more and et cetera. I would start it the day after you get paid. So so obviously everybody gets paid different times. Some people get paid twice a month. Some people get paid every other Thursday, every other Friday, whatever date. I would do it per pay period, or as a starting point again, and then start with, all right, you get paid on the 15th for pretend, then you're the 16th through whatever 2 weeks later or the half a month later, whatever works, and just do it for each paycheck. And say, all right, and then together those would all create a month. Now, if you get paid every 2 weeks, then you get 26 paychecks over a whole year. If you get paid twice a month, obviously that's 24. And so some people are like, oh, I got an extra paycheck, so to speak. And then they have to, but again, if you plan out, what am I going to do with this money as opposed to, yay, money kind of thing. Same thing with tax refunds. Tax season's coming up. I don't know how many of you all file taxes, but you've in general heard of tax refunds and stuff. Maybe you don't want to get a tax refund because if you get that money throughout the whole year, that's all your money, right? Kind of thing. And so maybe you try to decrease the chances of getting a refund, but some people are like, oh, I got a refund, I'm just going to go burn the money, as opposed to creating a plan. How are you going to spend that refund? Whatever ways that just thinking about, even if you plan to spend it on a want. Okay, at least you thought through it kind of thing. Great. Well, thank you. I know we need to wrap it up, and so thank you, but I'm happy to answer questions later.